Chapter 7 Bagman and Crouch. Harry disentangled himself from Ron and got to his feet. They had arrived on what appeared to be a deserted stretch of misty moor. In front of them was a pair of tired and grumpy-looking wizards, one of whom was holding a large gold watch, the other a thick roll of parchment and a quill. Both were dressed as muggles, though very inexpertly. The man with the watch wore a tweed suit with thigh-length galoshes. His colleague, a kilt and a poncho. "Morning, Basil," said Mr. Weasley, picking up the boot and handing it to the kilted wizard, who threw it into a large box of used portkeys beside him. Harry could see an old newspaper, an empty drinks can, and a punctured football. "Hello there, Arthur," said Basil warily. "Not on duty, eh? It's all right for some. We've been here all night. You'd better get out of the way. We've got a big party coming in from the Black Forest at 5:15. Hang on, I'll find your campsite. Weasley. He consulted his parchment list. "About a quarter of a mile's walk over there. First field you come to. Site manager's called Mr. Roberts, Diggory. Second field, ask for Mr. Payne." "Thanks, Basil," said Mr. Weasley, and he beckoned everyone to follow him. They set off across the deserted moor, unable to make out much through the mist. After about 20 minutes, a small stone cottage next to a gate swam into view. Beyond it, Harry could just make out the ghostly shapes of hundreds and hundreds of tents, rising up the gentle slope of a large field towards a dark wood on the horizon. They said goodbye to the Diggories and approached the cottage door. A man was standing in the doorway, looking out at the tents. Harry knew at a glance that this was the only real Muggle for several acres. When they heard their footsteps, he turned his head to look at them. "Morning," said Mr. Weasley brightly. "Morning," said the Muggle. "Would you be Mr. Roberts?" "Aye, I would," said Mr. Roberts. "And who are you?" "Weasley, 2 tents. Booked a couple of days ago?" "Aye," said Mr. Roberts, consulting a list tacked to the door. "You've got a space up by the wood there. Just the one night?" "That's it," said Mr. Weasley. "You'll be paying now, though," said Mr. Roberts. "Ah, right, certainly," said Mr. Weasley. He retreated a short distance from the cottage and beckoned Harry towards him. "Help me, Harry," he muttered, pulling a roll of Muggle money from his pocket and starting to peel the notes apart. "This one's a 10? Ah, yes, I see the little number on it now. So this is a 5. "A 20, Harry corrected him in an undertone, uncomfortably aware of Mr. Roberts trying to catch every word. "Ah, yes, it is. I don't know. These little bits of paper." "You foreign?" said Mr. Roberts, as Mr. Weasley returned with the correct notes. "Foreign?" repeated Mr. Weasley, puzzled. "You're not the first one who's had trouble with money," said Mr. Roberts, scrutinising Mr. Weasley closely. "I had 2 try to pay me with great gold coins the size of hubcaps 10 minutes ago." "Did you really?" said Mr. Weasley nervously. Mr. Roberts rummaged around in the tin for some change. "Never been this crowded," he said suddenly, looking out over the misty field again. "Hundreds of pre-bookings. People usually just turn up." "Is that right?" said Mr. Weasley, his hand held out for his change. "But Mr. Roberts didn't give it to him." "Aye," he said thoughtfully. "People from all over. Loads of foreigners. And not just foreigners. Widows. You know? There's a bloke walking around in a kilt and a poncho." Shouldn't he?" said Mr. Weasley anxiously. "It's like some sort of... I don't know. Like some sort of rally," said Mr. Roberts. "They all seem to know each other, like a big party." At that moment, a wizard in +4s appeared out of thin air next to Mr. Roberts' front door. "Obliviate," he said sharply, pointing his wand at Mr. Roberts. Instantly, Mr. Roberts' eyes slid out of focus, his brows unknitted, and a look of dreamy unconcern fell over his face. Harry recognised the symptoms of one who had just had his memory modified. "A map of the campsite for you," Mr. Roberts said placidly to Mr. Weasley. "And your change." "Thanks very much," said Mr. Weasley. The wizard in +4s accompanied them towards the gate to the campsite. He looked exhausted. His chin was blue with stubble, and there were deep purple shadows under his eyes. Once out of earshot, Mr. Roberts, he muttered earshot of Mr. Roberts, he muttered to Mr. Weasley, "Been having a lot of trouble with him. Needs a memory charm 10 times a day to keep him happy. And Ludo Bagman's not helping. Trotting around talking about bludgers and quaffles at the top of his voice, not a worry about anti-muggle security. Blimey, I'll be glad when this is over. See you later, Arthur." He disappeared. "I thought Mr. Bagman was head of magical games and sport," said Ginny, looking surprised. "He should know better than to talk about bludgers and muggles, shouldn't he?" "He should," said Mr. Weasley, smiling and leading them through the gates into the campsite. "But Ludo's always been a bit, well, lax about security. You couldn't wish for a more enthusiastic head of the sports department, though. He played Quidditch for England himself, you know, and he was the best beater the Wimborne Wasps could ever have." They trudged up the misty field along rows of tents. Most looked almost ordinary. Their owners had clearly tried to make them as muggle-like as possible. I'm just trying to find the end of the paragraph. Or not the paragraph, the chapter, so I know where to stop. Trying to make them as muggle-like as possible, but slipped up by adding chimneys or bell pulls or weather vanes. However, here and there was a tent so obviously magical that Harry could hardly be surprised that Mr. Roberts was getting suspicious. Halfway up the field stood an extravagant confection of striped silk, like a miniature palace, with several live peacocks tethered at a fence entrance. A little further on, they passed a tent that had 3 floors and several turrets, and a short way beyond that was a tent which had a front garden attached, complete with a bird bath, sundial, and fountain. "Always the same," said Mr. Weasley, smiling. "We can't resist showing off when we get together." "Ah, there we are. Look, this is us." They had reached the very edge of the wood at the top of the field, and there was an empty space with a small sign hammered into the ground that read, "Weasley." It wasn't spelled correctly. It was spelled Weezly. "Couldn't have a better spot," said Mr. Weasley happily. "The picture just on the other side of the wood there. The closest we could be." He hoisted his backpack from his shoulders. "Right," he said excitedly. "No magic cloud, strictly speaking. Not moving out in these numbers on Muggle land. We'll be putting these tents up by hand. Shouldn't be too difficult. Muggles do it all the time. Here, Harry, where do you reckon we should start?" That's all I'm going to read for now because I want to read through it all first. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a like, a comment, and subscribe. And yeah, thank you for watching. There will be a part 2 of this video and part 3, however long it takes to finish this book. Some videos will be longer than others, obviously. So yeah, bye.